Are you recording?
Yeah.
Yeah. Test. Test. Recording?
Shit.
Careful. It should be about 2 hours in that direction. Are you scared easily?
I don't know, depends.
I don't know. But they say that in these woods, like, the best horror film should be hiding.
As I have said several times now, I am not a fan of horror films. I think the definitive characteristic of this genre should be, as the name would suggest, the horror element. However, most movies fail to have such an effect on me. They tend to rely heavily on cheap jump scares which aren't scary. They're just surprising at best. Rarely have I encountered a horror movie which makes me on edge while watching it, much less one that has me tense after its viewing. This is why I decided to embark on this exploration of horror films. Fortunately, I would not be by myself. I saw each one of the films listed in this video together with my girlfriend, who, by her own account, is a lot more easily scared. You can use her as a litmus test of how a more normal person would react to the horror genre. On top of providing a short review for each movie, we will score them based on two ratings: how good and how scary they are. The latter measures our physical response to the given film. The former measures our aesthetic appreciation of it, how good the cinematography, acting, writing were, and so on. The standard movie rating scheme. You can see our ratings in the bottom right corner of each film. They're both out of 10. And with this, let us begin our quest of finding the best horror movie, which with Halloween right around the corner makes it a perfect theme for the season.
Yeah. No, but I've seen my fair share of horror movies, but they just never did it for me. Like, I've seen, what was it, The Ring and all of the classics. Yeah?
Shut the fuck up.
What?
Can you hear that?
What?
I don't know. I just hear something.
Where you going?
Listen, I hear something.
That's just the wind. That's just the wind playing tricks here. There's nothing there.
How the fuck can the wind do that?
I don't know, like...
We decided to start off our adventure with what is a very unique style of horror films: found footage. I would say this works really well with the genre as it puts the viewer in the position of the characters. We see everything from their point of view, and the very idea of found footage implies a certain tension that the characters will probably not survive. Our first pick was the Blair Witch Project. Indeed, probably not the first found footage film, it still is the one that popularized the style in the mainstream. It is a cult classic and has managed to spawn several sequels and even a video game adaptation. Personally though, I didn't find the Blair Witch Project scary at all. This is a common theme you will find in a lot of the horror movies here. The scary moments often arise out of the character's stupidity and them taking illogical and self-destructive actions rather than some fundamentally unnerving threat. For example, the characters in the Blair Witch Project have mostly become victims to poor orientational and poor survival skills. Yes, I know the compass was acting fucky, but there are 100 other ways to navigate, be it with the sun, with the moss, with the map alone, following a river, and so on. And the map? Their one way of navigating? One of the characters throws it out for no reason. The movie wasn't scary at all. It was more of a what not to do in the wild 101. Really, they were about to die without the assistance of the witch. And the ending was bafflingly stupid. My girlfriend's review was, there were a couple of actions that had no reason and felt so forced, and it was so annoying to watch the characters be dumb. Also, what was the correlation with the guy murdering 7 people and the witch? Wish the witch was more of an active threat. Overall, it was an original idea with some mild success. The acting was pretty good, but the writing was terrible. Our next found footage film was a more obscure Spanish cult classic, Wreck. The premise of this movie is quite straightforward. A news crew reporting on the activities of a fireman squad gets quarantined in an apartment building because of the spread of some zombie virus. I would say this movie is definitely an improvement over the Blair Witch Project. First, the cameraman remains a bit more passive, which allows the audience to better understand the situations while still feeling a part of them. Second, characters take much more logical decisions and actively try to work against the problems presented before them. But this movie really highlighted for me the issue with found footage films from a narrative perspective. During a lot of these dangerous situations, one of the characters remains a mere observer as they just film what is happening. And while being attacked or running from something, they continue to hold on to a rather bulky camera and equipment which can only get in the way of their escape. Still, Wreck was okay. The ending kinda ruined it for me as it introduced a rather dumb explanation for the origin of the zombies. It was really pulled out of nowhere and seemed so out of place in the story. My girlfriend's review was, I think this one was a very good classic idea of a horror movie. Definitely used more scare tricks. The tension at the end got to me. I'm so sad that the cameraman died. And to finish off this style, we have Paranormal Activity. I will keep it very brief here since a lot of what I have to say about this movie was said for the previous two. In contrast to them though, I did find this movie actually somewhat scary beyond the jump scares. I wasn't on edge or shaking from it, but I still felt a decent bit of discomfort and tension. Congratulations to the movie. I also enjoyed some of the creative solutions employed by the characters to deal with the paranormal occurrences. Still, the main drive of the movie remained the stupidity or maybe the arrogance of the boyfriend character who refused to take the demon seriously despite the plentiful evidence of its hostility. He was also very dismissive of his girlfriend, which was actually the one making the better and more logical choices, but I guess what more can you expect from a crypto bro? As for how good it was, I would say it was definitely better than the previous two. Given this style of filming, I do not expect some great aesthetic shots, but still, Paranormal Activity felt at best average. My girlfriend's opinion was pretty much the same. The boyfriend pissed me off, was so upset for her, she was just scared and the whole movie could have not existed if it wasn't for the boyfriend. There should be a better reason for the demon becoming mad rather than a character making everything worse.
What? What do you find? Is that a cave?
Yeah, something small. But
Shh, 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 shh. Listen. Shh, be quiet.
Okay, so at this point in our journey, I became a bit overly excited as I found out about two horror movies which I had not heard about before. I love Lovecraft's work. The world he builds about these incomprehensible otherworldly beings is so captivating and has managed to keep me tense for days after finishing his stories. So imagine my joy as I find out that The Color Out of Space and The Call of Cthulhu both have movie adaptations. I did not expect much though, as I think his stories can be very difficult to adapt as they rely on vague descriptions to prompt the reader's imagination. Making it a concrete visual would ruin the tension. Still, I was curious to check them out. We first watched The Color Out of Space. It quickly became evident to me that calling it an adaptation of Lovecraft's work was misleading. The only thing they had in common was the title and some parts of the premise. Everything else was a completely new and improved idea of the writers Richard Stanley and Scarlett Amaris. Introducing one of the children as a devout witch was unbearably cringe. And this change was done for the singular moment where she carves out some symbols in her skin. One may be led to assume that this somehow protects her from the alien powers, but that doesn't seem to be the case towards the end of the movie. Why did her character do that? I have no idea. I guess she was just a nutso, as all Wiccans are. At one point things just started happening in the story for no reason. And I don't mean the otherworldly horror stuff. I understand the point of it is to be incomprehensible. I mean some weird beats which had no bearing on the story whatsoever. Thank you for butchering this Lovecraft story. One thing I can appreciate is the visuals. They were pretty cool and sometimes genuinely unnerving. Finishing this movie, I was left with a bad taste in my mouth. My disappointment was immeasurable and my day was ruined. We checked The Call of Cthulhu out, but it seemed to not be anything of worth. If you like horror fiction, you must read Lovecraft. Do not watch any adaptations of his work though. Still, we decided to check out movies which on the internet were labeled as Lovecraftian, hoping to find something similar to the experience from Lovecraft's work. Thus we found our way to The Thing. My father had spoken very fondly of this movie, and to this day it remains the 4th highest rated horror movie on IMDb. After watching it, I can see why it has received the praise it did. It definitely presents an original story. The best way I can describe it is Among Us IRL. However, the horror element wasn't all there. It had a much better mystery element as one tries to figure out which one the imposter is, which definitely makes the movie a lot more interesting. It can look a bit dated as it is now more than 40 years old. This made some of the scenes feel a bit goofy, so that is perhaps why some of the horror elements did not land. Still, it was quite well made. I won't say it was anything exceptional, but it was pretty good. My girlfriend's review was, main character had a stupid plan, however it was also understandable as he was probably exhausted, scared and confused. The ending was kinda shit though as it felt too easy compared to the whole movie. The last one for this section is The Void. The Thing, The Void, I know, very original titles. The Void is probably one of the worst movies I have ever seen. It had a somewhat interesting premise, but it failed to deliver anything. It was just one or two interesting scenes and that was it. We couldn't finish the movie as it was so bad, so we just skipped through it. Trust me, never watch this movie.
Why'd you have to scare me like that?
I'm sorry, I thought I heard a wild animal or something, you know? Could have been the, its cave where it goes to burrow. Didn't want us to get attacked, I'm sorry.
Okay, after watching adaptations of Lovecraft's work, there was no way we couldn't do Stephen King's. We started with The Shining. Come on, it's Stanley Kubrick, it's Stephen King. Of course it is good. So many amazing shots, and the acting is really well done. But I wouldn't call the movie particularly scary. This was my second time watching it, and both times I was left a bit disappointed because of that. Some of the visuals looked unnerving, but they didn't have too much bearing on the plot. The deterioration of Jack also comes a bit too soon, I would say, where around minute 40 he already seems to be off the rockers. The movie also makes a significant change to the story. In the book, the hotel sets on fire due to Jack's neglect of his duties. I do prefer that ending as it comes out as a cause of the character's actions. I have unfortunately never read King, so I can't do a better comparison of the adaptations to the original. Overall, I would say the movie was aesthetically good but not scary at all. My girlfriend's review was, I feel like the plot wasn't fully connected. The whole movie is about The Shining and introduces that Danny has this power, but they don't explain anything or give clear connection to why The Shining matters, other than the fact that the ghosts are more active. In 2019, a sequel to The Shining came out, so for the sake of completionism, we watched it as well. To be honest, that movie doesn't even feel like a horror movie, despite it being presented as such. It felt more like a superpower action one. And of course, it is nowhere nearly as masterfully done as The Shining. My girlfriend surprisingly enjoyed it a decent bit more than me. She said that this movie felt like it had a more coherent flow than the first one. Also, I like that they explained more about The Shining. I think the overall story of the first one was better, but this one just had a better flow. The other major adaptation of King's horrors is the 2017 It. This time my girlfriend had read the book, so we could analyze the adaptation better. Visually, the movie is the most impressive on the list. The scene with Pennywise dancing on the stage is genuinely unnerving. It is also a pretty good movie overall. I had only a few gripes with the story as characters took inconsistent actions. For example, I never understood why did they believe that Georgie would be in the sewers. It would have made much more sense to assume that he was kidnapped or something more common. It could be me as a big brother speaking, but the introductory scene with Georgie losing his boat and subsequently dying made me genuinely sad. I do think that having children be the main cast makes the horror a lot easier to land, as we perceive them as weaker and less capable of dealing with the situation. This point is probably why I didn't enjoy It Chapter 2 as much. It stars the same children from the first one, however 27 years later. All grown up, they come back to their childhood town to fight and defeat the same monster. The visuals were still top notch, but now that the story is about adults, we expect them to be better at defending themselves. I was surprised that among so many American adults, not one decided to go buy hunting rifles. The story also had some major problems. My main gripe is the suicide of Stanley. At the end, it is revealed that his reasoning for taking his own life is to give motivation to the Losers Club to fight together. But they had gathered together before they found out about his death. In fact, it was because of his death that they almost split up. But yeah, with the childhood innocence gone, so does the element of horror diminish. My girlfriend's review largely agrees with my take. She writes, It Chapter 2 was written worse than the first one. People said or did things that don't make sense as a character or what they're dealing with. The kids were better.
And yeah, I think, up to the ending was actually fine, but the ending was just...
Nick, I think there's someone following us.
Where?
Over there.
I don't see anyone.
I'm pretty sure I saw someone there though.
Where?
Over there.
That's just the trees.
No, I'm pretty sure I saw someone in the trees.
There's nothing there. Just calm down. It's just your imagination is playing tricks on you.
There is no way we could have ignored the slasher genre. A wild, crazed murderer killing off young teens was one of the very first horror movies I saw in their entirety as a kid. Hence why you would expect me to speak fondly of the genre, but I don't like slashers. I find them lazy, redundant, a glorification of gore and nothing more. Seldom are they scary, let alone actually good movies. Still though, we have to watch at least some for this list. So the first one we picked is the grandfather of all slasher movies, Psycho. One of Hitchcock's best movies, and you know what? 60 years later it holds visually. I enjoyed this movie so much. It is perfect. Great acting by Anthony Perkins, incredible score by Bernard Herrmann, and meticulous directing by Hitchcock. Some aspects of the movie may seem dated, but as I said, it is already 60 years old. I have seen well-praised movies from the early 2000s that have aged way more poorly. One aspect that may not land as well with the contemporary viewer is the plot. For the first part, it is very slow, almost unrelated to the horror aesthetic of the movie, but that fits it perfectly. A slow build-up so that you don't see the sudden shift in mood. As a contemporary viewer though, this twist is somewhat ruined. We all know what is going to happen. We all have seen the famous shower scene. I still do enjoy how the movie attempts to mislead you with its first act. The last act is also not your traditional slasher. It doesn't have all those tropes of the villains suddenly opening their eyes or young half-naked men and women getting killed in gruesome fashions. It just has people dying little by little. You even get the perspective of the antagonist. They become humanized. The story is really solid, but nowadays it is kind of predictable. It is cliché. We have seen so many of these split personality characters to the point that they are now subverted in some media. However, for its time, this must have been a revolutionary story for the broad audience. Watch Psycho. You will not be disappointed. It is incredibly good. The main problem I have with it is that it's absolutely not scary. Granted, it is the grandfather of slasher movies. So to see if they actually improved, we watched one from the late 70s, early 80s, a period many have called the golden age of slasher movies. Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all these classics are from that period. We chose the very first one to start this trend, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. From its opening, I loved it. It had a great and simple opening sequence that really makes you unnerved and disgusted. But then this scene came up, and I started finding the movie more goofy. Granted, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was filmed on a tight budget. Tight is a very strong word for what is the equivalent of $750,000. This kinda meant that the director had to film it in a very short period of time. As such, some of the actors don't deliver their best performances. I like how the movie was filmed, especially the last 30 minutes, but some very minor errors took me aback. The climax was so surreal as a scene and so disturbing, but it was ruined by the over-the-top zooms on the protagonist's eyes and the screeching sounds with it. If you cut these out and focus just on the chaos, nothing is lost. We still will very much understand the terror of the protagonist while also being allowed to take in the scene. Anyways, it was a pretty good movie, and it was definitely a bit scarier than most movies on this list. To finish off the slasher movies, we have the almost parody Scream. It takes all the slasher cliches and makes fun of them, sometimes a bit too obviously. I think that too much meta commentary within your own movie breaks the experience. Even if your goal is to make fun of the cliches, constantly pointing that out takes you out of the experience. Sometimes Scream did it well, other times not as much. I do think it is a nice movie. The mystery was well thought out and its resolution was satisfying, but I would not call it scary. It is precisely this meta commentary that breaks your illusion, and you just can't take all the killings too seriously to feel on edge.
Wait, I think I saw something.
No, Nick. Where are you going? Stop. Don't leave me.
Hold up. I think I saw something.
No, Nick, stop.
Wait, I'll be right back. You just wait.
No. What? No.
Okay, so next up are all the movies I could not be bothered to group and classify together. These were movies we found under the horror and scary tags on IMDb or ones that we had heard of from before. First off, we have the Ring series. We didn't watch all of them as I don't want to see the same gimmick across 5 different movies. The first one should hopefully be representative enough. I can kind of see why this film got so popular. In an age where TVs were ubiquitous, a monster which preys on you through the medium which you take in the movie puts the enemy right in your living room. From what I saw from the sequels, Samara adapts to the time and now haunts people through the internet. So how scary was it actually? Not much. The best part of the movie and the creepiest was the tape itself. That was actually interesting to watch. I would love to see a horror movie based on this abstract aesthetic. The horror element aside, The Ring was a pretty bad film. The story was somewhat coherent, but there were some moments that really made no sense. I also hate the trope of a child is more attuned to the esoteric for some reason, which this movie really abused. Overall, it was a very mediocre film. Little known fact, but the Ring series actually finds its origin in a Japanese 1998 movie, The Ringu. In fact, the American remake is almost a shot-for-shot recreation for the first half. So after we saw The Ring, we felt obliged to watch its Japanese predecessor and compare the two. And you know what? It was better. Granted, it seemed a lot more of a budget film than the remake, with some of the effects being almost goofy in the context of the story. I did enjoy the plot more as it was better thought out than in the American version. And fortunately, they didn't have so much focus on the child character. However, the movie really lost me when out of the blue they introduced one of the characters as a psychic. That was suddenly dropped and in the next scene became important to the plot. This is a symptom of bad writing. You have written your characters in a tight spot, so now you shoehorn in some MacGuffin or random power to help them out. There was no proper foreshadowing for his ability. I was going to rate the original higher than its remake if it weren't for this, and a few other minor things. My girlfriend reviewed it as, this one felt a little better fleshed out, however still had many small flaws. The first half was better than the second. Also the effect they had on the deaths made me laugh. The last classic horror movie franchise we have is the 2004 Saw. The sheer interest it generated, all the Saw spin-offs, Minecraft maps, escape room themes. The movie has garnered a dedicated following. But honestly, I had never seen it. I expected these complex and unpleasant puzzles people will have to solve in order to save their lives, which will serve as a character study. And that I got to some extent, for half the movie. The other half was unnecessary flashbacks and time spent on an unnecessary B-plot. This man had no bearing whatsoever on the story beyond introducing Jigsaw as a serial killer. The movie had zero horror in it. It was just torture porn. It was also beyond frustrating. Okay, so everyone remembers the culminating moment when he decides to saw off his leg because he thinks his family is dead, right? So he does this because he can't reach the phone anymore. But this was a problem already solved in the very first few minutes of the movie. Use your shirt to grab it. The ending got bafflingly stupid. While watching the movie, I turned to my girlfriend and said, "Oh, if that corpse there stands up and turns out to be the mastermind, I will be so mad." And that did happen. First off, no one shoots themselves and falls so perfectly. Second, the doctor should have been able to see that something wasn't right about the wound of the corpse. All in all, I can only give the movie some points for a clever idea. Next we have Robert Eggers' debut film, The Witch. The movie is really good, and that was his first film. Robert Eggers is a great director, but I still maintain that his best movie is The Lighthouse. The Witch still scores highly on the aesthetic rating, but the horror wasn't all there. Certainly it had horror elements that could make you feel uneasy, but I wouldn't consider them anything noteworthy. My girlfriend's review was a good movie, wasn't scary at all, but the plot was interesting and acting was really good. This next movie may almost seem like it should not have the horror tag attached to it, but hey, we hadn't seen it, so we couldn't have known. I remember Mother generating a lot of hype when it first came out in 2017. I had it on my watch list for a while, so this seemed like the perfect time to strike it off. First off, the movie is very well made and the acting is stellar. But there is one small problem. Very early on in the movie, I caught on to what was going on. A biblical retelling from the perspective of Mother Earth. So I quite accurately predicted where the movie was going. And yes, this could have ruined our enjoyment from it. We still were able to enjoy it a decent bit. Towards the end though, it felt like it got a bit on the nose and too preachy. I enjoyed the more mysterious, abstract first two acts. As for scariness, I don't think it should be taught as a horror movie. There were zero horror elements. At best you may feel frustrated or on edge. Next we have Donnie Darko. I really like this movie. I'm usually sold on time fucky wucky shit, and Jake Gyllenhaal delivers an incredible performance when he was barely 20 years old. The movie is incredible. Sound and visual work together in a perfect symbiosis to create this extremely eerie and uneasy atmosphere. The movie is somewhat scary, around maybe the level of The Witch. My girlfriend found it decently scary. She writes, "Not what I expected, but was an entertaining movie. Would like to watch again to see the details and how everything lines up, as I feel it would make even more sense if I do that." Last on the list we have John Krasinski's A Quiet Place. Yes, Jim from The Office did direct, write and star in the film, and it was surprisingly good. The attention to detail was immaculate. Granted, there were some moments which felt forced for the purpose of introducing conflict. As for scariness, it certainly was tense, but I never felt anything stronger than that.
Okay, Alyssa. Turns out everything was fine. There's nothing here. Alyssa! Where'd she go? Alyssa!
This is not the end though. During our journey, we found a film that we both agreed was genuinely scary and for both of us scored very high on the 2 ratings. This wasn't our first time watching, so granted we might have become a bit numb to it. However, the first time I saw it, I was left for hours after the movie feeling on edge, and even weeks after seeing it, I was still thinking about the ending. The people whom I have asked about it have all shared the same sentiment. It is genuine horror. But to be perfectly honest, it is not a feature-length film and it's technically a short film. I am of course describing Black Mirror's episode Playtest. It is in my opinion one of the best Black Mirror episodes, second only to Shut Up and Dance. The story is interesting. A man testing out a new augmented reality chip which learns his fears and presents them to him. The build-up from random spiders to creepy imagery to more psychological horror of being hunted and abused, and the absolute chilling ending. Not once do you think that the character is being a victim of his stupidity. It also serves as a great character study, exploring what hides behind the facade of the cool adventurous dude and finding that fundamental fear from which he is running. Granted, the episode may also be playing on my own phobias. As an ex-arachnophobe and someone who has had experience with relatives succumbing to dementia, I can tell you this episode really hit home. You must watch it. Any fan of horror should see it. My girlfriend's review is... Wait, where did she go?
Fuck, where'd she go? Alyssa! Alyssa! Where the fuck did she go? Oh, Alyssa! Oh, fuck. Fuck, Alyssa. Fuck. What the fuck is that? Fuck. Fuck. Shit. Fuck. What the fuck? Fuck. I don't think he followed me. Fuck.